Today marks 40 years since the Chernobyl accident at the nuclear power plant in Ukraine. In 1986, an explosion and fire at the power plant released large quantities of radioactive particles into the atmosphere, which spread over much of western Ukraine and Europe. It caused immediate deaths and long-term environmental contamination. Unlike many other nuclear reactors, Chernobyl lacked a robust containment building to keep radiation within the plant during the accident. Hundreds of thousands of people were evacuated from surrounding areas after the disaster. An exclusion zone was established, displacing over 200,000 people across Ukraine and Belarus in the following weeks and months. However, within a few hours, dozens of people fell ill. Later, they reported severe headaches and metallic tastes in their mouths, along with uncontrollable fits of coughing. Today, you can visit the Chernobyl exclusion zone, but it requires official authorization, typically through a guided tour. While some areas are safe for short-term visits, others remain highly contaminated and uninhabitable. Experts predict areas around Chernobyl will not be safely habitable for humans for thousands of years due to the radiation levels.